In today's video, I will teach you all the things you need to know to establish a trimmed foot on the bottom of your piece, taking it from this to a finished clean foot. There are two reasons why we trim our pieces. First, to remove excess clay, and second, to make it beautiful. Before we remove our piece from the wheel, we want to establish two things: a level lip and a thick base that's cut round. Doing these things will make centering and trimming much easier. When we trim, we establish three things: an outside foot, a rounded foot, and an inside foot. Each part is crucial to the longevity of our pieces. Before starting the process of trimming, you want to ensure that your piece is at the leather hard stage. Go ahead and watch the Stages of Clay video to remind you of what leather hard is. If your piece is too wet, the clay will stick to your tool. If it is too dry, it will come off as dust, which is not safe in the studio. When your piece is at the leather hard state, it will come off in these beautiful ribbons as you trim. So, let's begin. The first step to trimming on the wheel is to center. Here I am showing a very off-center piece. Drawing a little circle with my needle tool, holding that steady, we can see that there is quite a bit of clay on one side and not enough on the other. The process that I'm going to teach you is called tap centering. With a little practice, this will be the easiest way to center your piece on the wheel. Starting off, you want to put your piece off-center, away from the rings. Slowly spin it, and as it comes around, tap it with your hand. As you tap it, the pressure will allow it to put itself to the center. As a little reminder, the most important things to help you to center on the wheel are to have a level lip and a base that is cut round. To tap center, you need to set your piece off-center at first, then slowly spin your wheel. As it comes around, tap it gently with your hand. Slowly, as it gets closer and closer, tap it a little bit more frequently. After a bit of practice, tap centering should only take a few seconds. Without tap centering, centering your piece for trimming will take a little bit longer. When I do this process without tap centering, I take a needle tool and I hold it nice and steady. As it comes around, I adjust the piece ever so slightly to get it closer to center. This process is not a perfect science. Oftentimes, tap centering will get it even more centered than slowly moving and shifting the piece, as you can see here. You can know your piece is centered when you can draw a circle and there is an even amount of clay all the way around. Another great way is to take your needle tool, hold it steady, and draw a nice clean circle all the way around. After your piece is centered, it's time to secure it to the wheel. You will do this in a triangle pattern. Taking a few wet pieces of clay, we call them lugs, press them down onto your piece, down where the wheel head and the lip of your pot meet. In a triangle pattern, press down this clay, helping to secure it to the wheel. Don't press too hard because you don't want to warp your piece. After doing this, your piece is secured to the wheel. Even at full speed, it won't fly off, although I don't recommend it. Next, you will take your needle tool and establish your outside foot ring. Hold your needle tool steady and draw a circle on the top of your piece, just barely from the outside. Next, establish your inside foot ring. The distance between these two rings will be how thick your foot is. Too thin and your foot is likely to chip. Too thick and you're not removing enough clay. Remember, these are the 3 things we establish when we trim a foot on a piece. With your guidelines established, take your trimming tool and rest it on the outside, starting to remove the outside profile. The goal while we are trimming is to remove excess clay that will allow all of the walls to be very even. Often we want to trim the outside profile, but don't trim any further than halfway down your piece. You've already thrown your piece quite well, we just want to fine-tune it a little bit more. Trimming the outside of your piece is where we can really refine the shape of it. After we've trimmed the outside profile, we're going to trim our outside foot, also known as our glaze catch. Do this by taking your trimming tool and put it just below the top of your piece. This will create a ledge. That ledge will prevent any glaze from running too far off of your piece. When you have a runny glaze, it likely will melt at the 2300 degrees. So we will take our trimming tool, put it just below the top, and it will establish a ledge right there. This can be a very subtle feature or a very exaggerated feature. I would recommend always having this on any sort of piece that you create. Next, we will trim our inside foot. Remember, the first reason why we trim is to remove excess clay. Do this by anchoring your hands together with your trimming tool and cutting into the part that you establish for your inside foot. Trimming into that line first will help to establish that inside foot and make sure that you don't trim beyond there. Do this by gently turning your trimming tool down into that groove. After establishing that ring, it's time to remove the excess clay. Start by working from the outside in or from the inside out. Either way, we are going to be removing some of that clay, so the only place that our foot is touching is on that ring that we established. Take your time to remove that excess clay, being gentle not to trim through your piece, or else you will have to start over again. The last of the 3 aspects we want to establish is a rounded foot. When we take our tool, we can turn it over just gently and roll it over those edges. Doing this will help remove sharp edges which are prone to chipping after being fired. A slightly rounded foot will ensure that our piece is sitting on only one point, preventing chipping. Do this by taking your trimming tool and roll it over the edges. If your clay is relatively soft, you could also do this with your index finger. After establishing all 3 things, our outside foot, rounded, and our inside foot, remove your piece off the wheel, pick it up, and check the weight. If it feels bottom heavy, I highly recommend putting it back onto the wheel and repeating the process to remove that excess clay. This is where good pieces turn into great pieces. Here is a view of our freshly trimmed piece upright on the wheel. Notice the gentle ledge of our outside foot and the shadow created by our rounded aspect. You have now trimmed a piece on the wheel. This pot is now ready for a handle or to be signed and dried out, ready for its first firing. In final review, these are the reasons why we trim our pieces. First, to remove excess clay, and second, to make it beautiful.